오늘 날씨가 제법 쌀쌀하네요. 그죠?
네, 그러게요. 이런 날은 따뜻한 커피 한잔 하면서 좀 재미있는 얘기 나누기 좋죠.
맞아요. 딱 좋은 타이밍인 것 같습니다. 저희가 오늘 아주 흥미로운 이야기를 준비했거든요. 안녕하세요. 오늘 저희는 최근에 아주 뜨거웠던 행사죠. 비트코인 서울 2025 컨퍼런스를 다시 한번 좀 깊이 있게 살펴보는 시간을 가지려고 합니다. 그중에서도 정말 많은 분들이 관심을 가지셨던 세션인데요. 쟁리의 비트코인 스타트업의 함정과 돌파구, 이 세션 내용을 집중적으로 파헤쳐 볼 거예요.
네, 혹시 뭐 바쁘셔서 컨퍼런스 현장에 못 가셨거나 아니면 다녀오셨더라도 그 내용 다시 한번 좀 정리하고 싶다. 이런 분들께 오늘 저희 이야기가 딱일 것 같습니다.
네, 맞습니다. 일종의 핵심 요약본, 복습 노트 같은 거죠. 그리고 가능하다면요. 쟁리 발표 전문이나 관련 자료들 있잖아요. 그걸 먼저 한번 쓱 보시면 오늘 저희 대화가 훨씬 더 재밌게 다가올 겁니다.
좋은 팁이네요.
자, 그럼 이제 본격적으로 시작해 볼까요? 우선 이 쟁리라는 인물부터 좀 짚고 넘어가야 할 것 같아요. 경력이 정말 대단하죠?
네, 그렇죠. 투자은행, 기술회사, VC까지 거의 25년 이상을 이쪽 업계에서 활동한 그야말로 베테랑 투자자입니다.
특히 그 DCG나 갤럭시 디지털, 언체인드 캐피탈, 스완 같은 회사들 있잖아요. 이 굵직한 비트코인 관련 기업들 초기 투자자였다는 점이 눈에 띄더라고요.
맞아요. 그만큼 비트코인 생태계에 대한 이해도가 아주 깊다고 볼 수 있겠죠.
쟁리는 비트코인이요. 이미 금 다음가는 중요한 자산이다. 이렇게 봤고요. 시가총액도 2조 달러를 넘었으니까요. 최고의 가치 저장 수단이 될 잠재력이 있다. 이런 거죠.
네, 그런 긍정적인 평가를 했죠.
근데 동시에 딱 현실을 짚어주기도 했어요. 전 세계 자산 시장에서 차지하는 비중이나 실제 사용자 수, 이게 아직 1% 미만이라는 거예요.
그렇죠. 냉정한 현실이죠.
바로 이 지점, 이 간극에서 비트코인 스타트업들의 기회가 있다. 이렇게 본 거겠죠.
네, 맞습니다. 분명 기회는 있는데 사실 비트코인 스타트업에 투자가 없는 건 아니에요. 근데 솔직히 AI 같은 분야랑 비교하면 아직은 규모가 좀 작죠.
그렇죠. 어디에 주로 투자가 이루어지나요?
대부분은 이제 지갑 서비스나 미들웨어 기술 아니면 금융 서비스, 인프라 구축 이쪽에 좀 집중되어 있는 편이에요. 근데 여기서 좀 재밌는 게 그 코인베이스나 갤럭시, 서클 같은 회사들
네.
성공적으로 IPO를 했거나 앞두고 있잖아요.
네네.
근데 이 회사들이 사실 엄밀히 말하면 순수 비트코인 기업은 아니거든요. 암호화폐 전반이나 스테이블 코인 쪽 사업이 크죠.
그렇군요.
그래서 왜 아직 시장을 확 뒤흔들 만한 비트코인 중심 스타트업의 성공적인 IPO 사례는 잘 안 보일까? 이게 좀 생각해볼 문제라는 거죠.
바로 그 부분을 쟁리가 아주 날카롭게 파고들었습니다. 그가 지적한 함정들 한번 볼까요?
네, 첫째가 이거였어요. 비트코인이면 다 돼. 약간 이런 기술 만능주의 같은 착각이요.
네. 모든 문제에 비트코인이 답은 아니라는 거죠.
그렇죠. 중요한 건 기술 그 자체가 아니라 실제 사용자들이 뭘 필요로 하는지, 이게 정말 쓸모가 있는지 여기에 집중해야 한다는 겁니다. 과대 광고 말고요.
맞아요. 비트코인 커뮤니티 내부 이야기만 들을 게 아니라 진짜 시장 조사를 해야 한다는 거. 네. 외부 목소리요. 그 다음 두 번째 함정은 규제랑 보안 문제를 너무 가볍게 본다는 거예요.
이건 정말 중요하죠. 비트코인은 결국 돈이잖아요.
맞아요. 그래서 해킹으로 자산을 잃거나 자금 세탁 방지 AML 같은 규제를 어기면 이건 스타트업 생존에 치명적인 거죠.
그렇죠. 다행히 요즘 미국이나 대만 같은 곳에서 규제가 좀 명확해지는 추세이긴 하지만 그래도 보안은 정말 아무리 강조해도 부족하죠.
마지막 함정은 확장성 문제였습니다. 이건 기술적인 한계라기보다는 비즈니스 모델의 문제라고 봤어요.
비즈니스 모델이요?
네. 기술이 아무리 좋아도 너무 좁은 시장, 예를 들어 아주 기술적인 하드코어 비트코이너들만 상대한다거나 아니면 탈중앙화 소셜 같은 특정 이념에만 너무 매몰되면 사용자를 넓히기 어렵다는 거죠. 노스트를 같은 사례를 들기도 했고요.
이해됩니다. 지속 가능한 수익 모델이 없으면 힘들다는 얘기군요.
그렇죠. 결국 현실적인 수익 모델이 필수다, 이겁니다.
물론 함정만 얘기한 건 아니고요. 재기가 제시한 돌파구들도 아주 명확했습니다.
네, 기대되네요. 어떤 것들이 있었죠?
첫째는 철저하게 사용자 중심으로 가야 한다는 점입니다. 예전 웹 2.0 때 성공한 회사들처럼요. 우버나 에어비앤비 같은 사람들이 진짜 불편해하는 문제를 해결해줘야 한다는 거죠.
실질적인 문제 해결.
네, 좋은 예로 언체인드 캐피탈을 들었어요. 이 회사가 처음에는 멀티시그 기반의 비트코인 부관 서비스로 시작했거든요.
네.
그러다가 사용자들 요구에 맞춰서 대출도 해주고 거래도 지원하고 IRA 계좌 연동, 신탁 서비스까지 이렇게 계속 서비스를 확장하면서 꾸준히 성장했다는 거예요.
사용자의 필요를 계속 따라가면서 성장했군요.
그렇죠. 두 번째는 쉬운 사용성과 직관적인 디자인. 기술 잘 모르는 사람들도 쉽게 쓸 수 있게 만들어야 한다는 겁니다. 스트라이크 앱처럼요. 온보딩이 간편해야 해요.
아, 스트라이크 정말 간편하죠.
세 번째는 전략적 파트너십을 잘 활용하라는 거였습니다. 특히 기존 금융기관들하고 손잡고 라이센스나 규제 문제를 좀 풀어나가라는 조언이었죠.
현실적인 조언이네요.
네, 다만 특정 파트너에게 너무 의존하는 독점 계약은 좀 피하라고 했고요. 넷째는 강력한 팀입니다. 이 바닥이 워낙 변동성이 크니까 서로 믿고 장기적인 비전을 공유하는 그런 끈끈한 팀워크가 정말 중요하다는 거죠. 언체인드 캐피털 창업팀처럼요.
팀워크. 기본이지만 정말 중요하죠.
마지막으로는 학습과 적응 능력입니다. 서클이 적는 예인데요. 이 회사도 처음부터 잘 된 게 아니거든요. 여러 번 사업 방향 바꾸고 실패도 겪고 그러다가 결국 스테이블 코인에 집중해서 IPO까지 앞두게 된 거죠.
실패에서도 배우고 계속 적응하는 거군요.
네, 실패든 성공이든 계속 배우고 시장 변화에 유연하게 대처하는 게 필수라는 겁니다.
와, 오늘 잭리 발표 내용을 쭉 다시 짚어보니까 뭔가 명확해지는 느낌인데요. 결국 비트코인 스타트업이라고 해서 특별한 성공 공식이 있는 건 아니네요.
그렇죠.
실제 문제를 해결하고 사용자를 최우선으로 생각하고 규제 잘 지키고 좋은 팀 만들고 끊임없이 배우고 적응하고 어떻게 보면 정말 기본적인 비즈니스 원칙들이잖아요.
맞아요. 그런 기본 원칙을 이 비트코인이라는 특수한 환경에 어떻게 잘 녹여내느냐. 그게 핵심인 것 같습니다.
아, 근데 잭리 마지막 코멘트가 저는 되게 인상 깊었어요.
어떤 거요?
만약 성공적인 비트코인 회사를 만드는 게 너무 어렵다고 느껴진다면 그냥 꾸준히 비트코인, 그러니까 사토시를 모으는 게 어쩌면 당신에게 최고의 투자일 수도 있다. 이 말이요.
아, 맞아요. 저도 그거 듣고 피식 웃었는데 생각해보면 되게 현실적이면서도 의미심장한 말이죠.
네. 저는 이번 세션 내용을 다시 보면서 비트코인 생태계의 그 밝은 미래, 가능성 이런 것과 동시에 그 이면에 있는 현실적인 고민들, 과제들 이런 걸 같이 볼 수 있어서 참 좋았습니다. 기술만 중요한 게 아니라 역시 탄탄한 비즈니스 전략, 실행력 이게 정말 중요하구나 싶었어요.
저도 비슷하게 느꼈습니다. 특히 언체인드 캐피탈이나 서틀 같은 사례들을 보면서 결국 중요한 건 꾸준함 그리고 적응력이구나 하는 생각을 다시 했어요. 화려한 구호보다는 진짜 사용자에게 가치를 주고 문제를 해결하려는 그런 끈기, 그게 성공의 바탕이 되는 것 같습니다.
자, 오늘 저희가 준비한 이야기는 여기까지입니다. 마지막으로 여러분께 질문 하나 던지면서 마무리할까 하는데요.
네.
그렇다면 앞으로 비트코인이 우리 사회에 어떤 중요하고 큰 다음 문제를 해결하는 데 기여할 수 있을까요? 한번쯤 생각해 보시면 재미있을 것 같습니다.
흥미로운 질문이네요.
저희는 다음 시간에 더 유익하고 재미있는 내용으로 다시 돌아오겠습니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to take a look back, specifically at Bitcoin Seoul 2025.
Yeah, that was a great conference.
It really was. And there was one presentation in particular, Bitcoin startups, pitfalls, breakthroughs, and sustainable growth that really stood out.
Absolutely. So this deep dive, it's really for anyone who couldn't make it to Seoul, or maybe you were there but want a refresher on those key insights.
Exactly. We're aiming to sort of distill the critical lessons for navigating the whole Bitcoin startup scene, which, let's be honest, can be pretty complex.
For sure. And the speaker, Jack Lee, his perspective is just incredibly valuable given his background.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we even get to the startup advice, Jack Lee's own journey is, well, something else.
It really is. Sets the stage perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at over 25 years of experience. Started an investment in commercial banking way back.
Right, the traditional finance world.
Then jumped into tech, worked with Fastcom. They were making components for iPhones and iPads for Apple OEMs.
Wow, okay, so hardware manufacturing.
Exactly.
Right.
And then he moves into venture capital. And his early investment, I mean, they're significant. Digital Currency Group, DCG.
Which includes Grayscale, yeah. Huge for the ETF approvals.
Huge. And he was also early in Galaxy, even served as a director there.
Right. But the really interesting part, I think, is his latest shift.
Totally agree. Focusing solely on Bitcoin now. That move says a lot.
It does. It kind of mirrors the maturing of Bitcoin itself, doesn't it? Moving from broad crypto speculation to focusing on Bitcoin's core value. It gives him this unique viewpoint.
And speaking of Bitcoin's value, he laid out some numbers that really made me sit up.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin, top 5 global asset now by market cap. Around what, $2 trillion, give or take?
Pretty staggering number.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite that massive figure, it's still less than 0.3% of the entire global asset market, which is estimated around $900 trillion.
Wow, less than 0.3%. It's tiny, relatively speaking.
It's exactly opportunity, right? And Jack Lee, he really hammered home this idea of Bitcoin as the ultimate store of value, especially now with, inflation worries, U.S. debt.
All the macro stuff.
Right, and how its price just keeps rising against fiat. His big point was, it's money, not just an app, and you have to treat it that seriously.
Fundamental monetary technology.
Which leads to a kind of paradox, doesn't it? If it's this serious trillion-dollar asset, why haven't we seen a purely Bitcoin-focused company IPO successfully?
Yeah, unlike Coinbase or Galaxy or even Circle with stablecoins. Good question.
So what did Lee identify as the main roadblocks, the big pitfalls for these Bitcoin startups?
Well, he was pretty direct. The first one he called the Bitcoin as a panacea trap.
The Bitcoin fixes everything idea.
Exactly. He argued strongly against that. He pointed out, look, user adoption, investor adoption, it's still tiny. Less than 1% globally, he estimated.
Wow, still that low.
Yeah. So building these super niche ideology-driven products, like he mentioned social apps charging fees just for Bitcoiners to gather.
Sounds a bit echo chambery.
Right. He said they often miss the mark because Bitcoin is primarily about money. A monetary revolution, not just tech. And money problems are inherently complex, tied to the real world, not just solved with a cool app.
That makes so much sense. So the solution isn't just hype, it's utility.
Utility, exactly. That was his antidote. Focus on utility, not just the ideology or the hype. He stressed doing rigorous market research, looking outside the Bitcoin bubble.
So finding real problems first.
Yes. Find tangible, real-world problems. Financial inclusion, cross-border payments, digital ownership, privacy, things that affect everyday people. Then see if Bitcoin is the right tool to solve that specific problem elegantly. Don't start with Bitcoin and try to force-fit a problem.
Got it. Okay, what was the second pitfall?
The second big one, regulatory and security challenges. And this is massive because, again, Bitcoin is money.
Right, the stakes are higher.
Way higher. Centralized custody. Huge hacking risks. We've seen it happen too many times. Plus, regulators are watching closely. AML rules, things like CoinJoin for privacy. They can scare off teams and customers if there's legal uncertainty.
Yeah, the regulatory tightrope.
Exactly. A cyber attack or even just bad internal management leading to lost funds. It's not like a typical data breach. It's catastrophic for reputation, brings down the regulatory hammer. It's a very high-stakes game.
It really is. But did he see any light at the end of that tunnel? Any breakthroughs on the regulatory side?
He did, actually. He pointed to increasing regulatory clarity as a positive trend. Countries like the U.S., Taiwan, Korea, they're making progress, defining the rules of the road.
That's encouraging.
And he mentioned something really interesting. Major traditional banks are now looking at potentially owning crypto exchanges.
Whoa, really? Like big established banks?
Yeah, which could bring a whole new level of, perceived legitimacy, better security practices, maybe calm some nerves. It's a sign the ecosystem is maturing past the Wild West phase.
Okay, so regulation is evolving. What was the third pitfall?
Scalability and niche focus. This is about building things that, while maybe technically cool, just don't scale or only appeal to a tiny group.
Like the ideology trap again, but maybe more on the tech side.
Sort of. He used Nostra as an example. Remember Nostr, the decentralized social thing?
Yeah, big hype in 2023, especially with Bitcoiners.
Right. But its user base actually went down. It struggled against platforms like Twitter X because, honestly, most people don't face censorship daily and value the existing network effects more.
So the convenience factor wins out for most users.
Pretty much. Lee's insight was key here. Decentralized solutions are great for money, like Bitcoin itself, but for social apps, maybe not always the best fit if network effects and ease of use are king. You have to really think about where decentralization adds the most value.
So the answer isn't just build cool tech.
Definitely not. The solution he offered ties back to utility, build for real-world impact, create stuff that actually solves a big problem for lots of people or massively cuts costs or makes something way more efficient.
Sounds like solid business advice, really.
It is, but applied to Bitcoin. He stressed starting with an MVP, a minimum viable product, test it with a small group, prove it solves a real need before you even think about scaling big, validate first.
Right. Don't just build it because you can. Build it because people need it. Okay, so those are the big traps. How do companies actually avoid them and succeed? Did he talk about breakthroughs and growth strategies?
Absolutely. He didn't just list problems. He looked at what works, starting with lessons from Web 2.0.
Like Uber and Airbnb.
Exactly. Those companies took mobile internet and solved genuine everyday pain points. Hailing a cab was a hassle. Finding affordable places to stay was hard. They used tech to fix that for millions.
Identify the pain, apply the tech.
Precisely. And then he gave a fantastic Bitcoin-specific example, Unchained Capital.
Ah, yes, one of his early investments, right?
Right. They started with a laser focus on multi-signature self-custody. Needing multiple keys to move funds.
Super secure way to hold Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Remove single points of failure.
Exactly. Considered best practice. But then they evolved. They added lending against Bitcoin. Their slogan was something like, don't let your friends sell Bitcoin.
Huh. I like that. Access cash without selling your stack.
Exactly. Avoid taxes, keep your Bitcoin. And crucially, because customer funds were in those secure multi-sig vaults, they sailed through market crashes like the FTX collapse. Customer Bitcoin was safe.
Wow. Resilience built in from the start.
Totally. And they didn't stop there.
Yeah. What else?
They kept adding layers. Bitcoin trading, IRA support for U.S. tax stuff, then Garnet Trust for inheritance and estate planning with Bitcoin.
Building a whole financial services suite, basically.
Pretty much. And Lee noted their CEO, Joe, is apparently very quiet, methodical, no hype, just building step by step. They went from maybe $120 million when he invested to nearly $1 billion now, a fully regulated financial services company.
That's incredible growth, but built the right way. Slow, steady, secure. Very different vibe from a lot of crypto.
Completely different. And beyond Unchained, he highlighted other keys, like user-centric design.
Making it easy for normal people.
Yeah. He used Stride as an example. Okay, it needs KYC, regulatory stuff, but it makes using Bitcoin for payments super simple, intuitive, hiding the complexity.
That's essential for adoption. What else?
Strategic partnerships. This was interesting. He said lots of traditional finance players, especially in Asia, like Korea, want in on Bitcoin but don't know how.
They lack the tech or the expertise.
Right. So his advice, partner up, share revenue, learn from them. But, and this was key, don't do exclusive deals. Use partnerships to grow and learn, then expand.
Smart. It makes you wonder, like you said earlier, who will be the banks of the future?
Okay.
Maybe these kinds of partnerships.
Could be. And then there's community. You can't build in this space without it. You even use the analogy of like Elon Musk's fan base. That kind of passionate support is vital.
The network effect, but for people,
Mm-hmm.
drives adoption, feedback.
Absolutely. And underpinning all of this, a strong, trustworthy team.
This sounds crucial.
He really emphasized it. Founders need to know each other, trust each other, share the vision, have the work ethic. He contrasted it with teams that just collapse in 100 days because of infighting or lack of commitment.
Yeah, you hear those stories, especially in volatile markets. You need that internal resilience.
You really do.
Yeah.
Which leads to his final big theme, resilience and learning from failure.
The perseverance factor.
Totally. He used Jeremy from Circle as the prime example. Circle had failures, near collapses, but Jeremy kept pivoting, kept learning, focused on stablecoins around 2020, and boom, $20 billion IPO eventually.
Wow. Shows you got to stick with it, learn from the mistakes.
Exactly. Absorb the hits, adapt, keep the long-term vision.
So pulling this all together, what are the main takeaways from Jack Lee's talk? It sounds like building for real utility, not just ideology.
Right. Navigating regulations carefully as they become clearer.
Using smart partnerships, building strong teams.
Fostering community, and just being resilient. Learning as you go.
Yeah. It seems like a blend of cutting-edge tech and, honestly, pretty solid, almost old-school business sense.
I think that's a great way to put it. And he left the audience with a really interesting final thought.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, he said, look, if you, as a potential startup founder, can't genuinely figure out how to build something that provides real, tangible benefit to users in the Bitcoin space,
Then what?
then maybe the best investment for you is just stacking sats. Just buy and hold Bitcoin yourself.
Huh. That's pretty blunt, but probably true sometimes. If you can't add value, just hold the asset.
It's a grounding thought, isn't it? Reminds you to focus on creating real value.
It really does. Reflecting on this, what struck me most was that blend we mentioned. It's not just about cool blockchain tech. It's about solving problems, building sound companies, understanding markets. That mix is key.
For me, it really reinforced how important utility and just realistic expectations are. The passion in the Bitcoin space is incredible. It's a huge driver. But long-term success, that comes from delivering measurable value methodically. That seems to be the real sustainable path he was outlining.
Well said. A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this look back at Jack Lee's insights from Bitcoin Seoul 2025 was valuable for you and maybe spark some ideas as you explore this fascinating space.